Well, just when you thought the Pittsburgh Steelers had a legitimate shot to run away with the AFC North, they slap us right across the face and remind us that they are indeed the Mike Tomlin-led Pittsburgh Steelers. Nothing ever comes easy, and in fact, it's our own incompetence that makes things harder on ourselves. Mike Tomlin is now 0-7 in the division on the road in Thursday night football games, and the Bengals are now the new favorites to win the AFC North. A beautiful welcome to all of our listeners on the Boardman Black and Gold podcast with Zane and David. Well, back to square one, eh, David?
Oh, I mean, yeah, it's just there's so many things to say. It's so disappointing. We were building this game up so much, and everyone was a 3.5 game lead in the division going into week 8 is absurd. But like that almost, if you just don't screw up, you've got the division. And to kind of fall back from that, to no longer be the favorites, to lose to Joe Flacco, who barely been with the team. And this is like, this is my thought process is like, what did I, like the one time I'm like, Mike Tomlin, I'm giving him a break, like I think he's been doing all right. He might be developing some players, things like that. He once again proves, like, I don't want to dislike Mike Tomlin, but he proves to me why I should every week.
Every week. We're back to where we were, and that's the whole thing that I was thinking about too, is a 3.5 game for the division this early. The NFL can't let that happen. And, I've flirted around with this on the podcast a couple of times. I think the NFL has some sort of rigging involved with it. And for the Steelers to be out to such a huge lead, I don't think that they can really allow the Steelers to do that. And for that same reason, this gives them a storyline. Joe Flacco reviving the Cincinnati Bengals. They're back. Like, the Bengals are going to start winning games now. I guarantee you.
That's interesting because I don't know if they're back or we just played so bad. Because, and you may have a point with the NFL maybe having a bit of a script, because that Aaron Rodgers interception, that first one, was like one of the worst decisions I'd ever seen. Like, never once did I think that ball was going to be caught.
By a Steeler.
Right, by a Steeler, of course. So, yeah, that's an interesting point, but I don't know if they'll be back. I think we played so bad. I think that we led a run game that is the worst in the NFL. And when I say worst, they showed the statistic. It is, I think, as far as like yards per game, 30 yards worse than the 31st team in the league. They are abysmal. And they went all over our defense. And again, I'm not going to hate on Mike Tomlin anymore. I'm just going to ask questions and let the people come to the solution. Here's my question. How does your defense let that happen? Whose fault is it that this highest paid defense in the league, so arguably has the best players out in the field, is letting the worst rushing offense in the league run all over them? Whose fault is that?
I mean, it's no fault but their own. Chase Brown had been much maligned this entire year for doing literally nothing. And the thing is, too, they didn't even run the ball very much in this game. But every time they did, it was 10 yards a carry. Chase Brown had 11 carries for 108 yards. That's practically 10 yards a carry. They couldn't tackle him. He had space. He had great blocks. Like, this was supposed to be a sucky Bengals offensive line that, one, couldn't protect in the run, and two, couldn't protect in the pass either. Joe Flacco sat back there with no pressure the entire game and just threw the ball to Jamar Chase the entire game, and it worked. As you would expect it to work. He had 16 receptions to break the Bengals' all-time record. Like, he had been targeted, I think, 24 times in this game, and he just sat back there. Joe Flacco, 40-year-old Joe Flacco, sit there, deliver the football, and let their receivers do the rest of the work. And that's exactly what they did the whole game. Jumbo Joe Flacco had 342 passing yards in this game. It's the second most he has ever had against the Steelers ever.
I don't know how, being a coach on the sideline, you're seeing that happening and you don't change something. Like, take him out of man. Like, stop manning up on the guy. Like, they know they're just going to go to him. And when you have a guy like Darius Slay, who, he's a really good sound cornerback, but at his age, he's not going to be able to play man with T. Higgins or Jamar Chase. You can't do that. So don't. But we continued to do it, and we continued to let it happen. Everyone knew where they were going. Everyone knew what was going to happen, except like us, apparently, and we couldn't stop it. And I feel like we say that a decent amount where like everyone knew what was going to happen, and we just let it happen, or we didn't do it. And I mean, yeah, the defense was utterly abysmal. I think that every single point that we made last week, or why we both said wins, they failed to do. Everything that was like, oh, we're really good against the run game. Their run game stinks. Our secondary is getting healthier. They're like Joe Flacco stepping into a new role. I think we could get a lot of pressure. None of it. Like, we literally did nothing.
Well, and that's a part of things too, is because the dichotomy of this game, there is actually so much positive to talk about on the offensive side of the ball. And that's what makes this such a sucky loss, is because the offense showed up this week. They scored 31 points. They got into the end zone. I mean, aside from the 2 interceptions, which the first one was terrible, the second one was allegedly a good play. Both of us agreed that we didn't think it should have been an interception. But the whole thing is like the Steelers, they put up a ton of points, and they did fine offensively. This was tight end university. All 4 tight ends on the roster did something this week. Jonnu Smith had a touchdown catch. Darnell Washington had a touchdown catch. Pat Freiermuth had a game of legend. Connor Hayward had a decent game as well. Like, this was the actual proof that the Steelers don't necessarily need a wide receiver too, because DK Metcalf and their conglomeration of tight ends is sufficient to be good at football. And we still did, and we didn't supplement it with any defense.
No, and I completely agree. I think that Arthur Smith has me convinced we don't need a wide receiver number 2. All 3 tight ends did really, really well. Specifically, obviously, not Highsmith, Freiermuth. And yeah, DK Metcalf got involved. Like, we were doing, and we threw the ball to Scotty Miller and Roman Wilson once or twice, and they caught the ball and got good yards. And so really, besides that really, really bad pick, and then the interception, which I do think was incomplete, didn't survive the ground at all. But not just the passing game. Let's add on the fact that Jalen Warren, I'm pretty sure, had like 120 yards. It's just, who do you go to anymore? You can't blame Kenny Pickett anymore. You can't blame old Russell Wilson or Justin Fields. You're certainly not going to blame Hall of Famer Aaron Rodgers. Like, who are you going to blame? Because the offense did what it was supposed to do. The defense was like the week 1 defense that we were scared of. And it came back this week, and I don't know why.
Now, I have a question for you, because I've been mulling this over for the last couple of days. Do you wonder if the fact that the pass rush was so ineffective, that they really didn't get any penetration, that they really didn't get any pressure, do you think that's a byproduct of the short week? Is that something to kind of keep in mind? And do you think it takes a step forward against the Packers now that they've had plenty of rest?
I think it very well could. The one thing I'd say is that, their bye week was before the Browns game, so they were fully rested for that game more than a normal game. So, I don't know. For me, the bye week before the Browns game somewhat levels out the short week, because you're having extra rest going into this 2-game short week span. But I think it definitely could have played a factor. It shouldn't have played that big of a factor. I will say that. But that is one of the things I was going to say. I am still somewhat hopeful for next week, because it's an extra long week and we'll have plenty of time to recover. And I think that Mike Tomlin does well when he can spend more than 1 week game planning for just one team.
Well, I think that too, because, the fact that they did play man the entire game, Darius Slay had a terrible game. I mean, you could point to every single person on the defense. 1 week ago, we said every single person on the defense had a heck of a game. I think that's right straight out of your mouth. And then we're like, this week, I don't think anybody had a good game. Benton had 1 sack. Cam Hayward and TJ Watt combined for a half a sack apiece. And that was early in the game. Actually, I take that back. The Benton sack was early in the game. And then the Watt and Hayward sack came on that one drive where they actually did get that stop. It was deep in Bengals territory. It was after the punt, and that was right before the Freiermuth long touchdown. So that was the only time they really got any penetration late in the game, and it came at a big time. I'll give them that because, at that point, it's like, okay, we punted it away. We need a stop right here. And they did get the stop, which was good. But then they come back after that. They're not getting the pressure that they were on the previous drive. And if you give these Cincinnati wide receivers any extra time, and if you give Joe Flacco any extra time, if you're playing man defense, these corners have no shot. They literally have no shot. And we saw that on display this week. And that was, again, outside of that drive, the one before the game-winning drive for the Bengals, like the defense was just, they didn't do a single thing all game.
No, and it goes back to, Mike Tomlin has played against Joe Flacco for all of his career. And yet he had his second best game ever against you. Like, how do you let that happen? I get, all right, he has Jamar Chase, he has T. Higgins, who, you could argue when he was with the Ravens, he never really had anybody of that caliber. But still, this guy. Like, that's got to get under your skins. It'll get under my skin so bad. If this guy, extremely out of his prime, barely is in the league, it has a job because a bunch of people were hurt and then was traded, is going to come back and absolutely just throw it all over your defense. It's just embarrassing. And I think that, knowing that Freiermuth touchdown, though it was awesome, and I was super excited jumping him down, I knew it was too quick. And the problem is, it's not like, oh, it's too quick. There's Patrick Mahomes, there's Josh Allen, there's Joe Burrow. It was too quick. There's Joe Flacco. Has anyone in the world ever said it was too quick because they have Joe Flacco? I don't think so, because Joe Flacco didn't play that kind of game when he was with the Ravens. So why? It's really discouraging to see that we can let that happen to this guy when there are a plethora of quarterbacks outperforming him.
Well, I would totally agree with they scored too quick sentiment, because in the moment, he catches the ball, it was probably about 35 yards in the air, and he ran the rest of the 30 yards to get to the touchdown. The thing is, when he caught the ball, I'm almost like, okay, just get out of bounds. And I was thinking that in the moment. And as he keeps running, I'm like, no, somebody tackle him. And again, how many times has anybody ever said that? Anybody in the entire world ever said that we don't want a touchdown here? I was thinking consciously, I'm like, this is on the wrong side of the 2-minute warning. We can't do this. We have to somehow be able to milk a little bit of clock before we actually score, because even if we did get into the red zone, Aaron Rodgers has been incredible in the red zone this season. And that's the whole thing. I texted my dad and I said, you can't expect Pat Freiermuth, who's been starved all season long for any production, to say, go down there, because it would make no sense for you to go down there. But in the context of the game, it seems like you and I were thinking the same thing, that they just left too much time on the clock. And even as he's running for a touchdown, we're like, oh, this is not good. That should never, ever happen when you're a fan of any team, I feel like.
No, and especially the Steelers, because what world do we live in, and what state are we in that we're thinking that? With the Steelers, the pinnacle of defense, and we're like, oh, we scored too quick. Like, the alarm needs to be going off defensively, and we've got to get a grip, because that just isn't going to work. Sure, you could shut down the Browns when they didn't have any wide receivers, and a plethora of other things going on. But I mean, this will be a good test coming up Sunday against Green Bay, because their offense is like 50-50. You kind of don't know what you're going to get, but they're pretty decent. And so I think this will be a good test of all right, what is the Steelers defense?
Yeah. Before we get into Green Bay, I want to ask you a little bit about Joe Flacco, because you were kind of alluding to it. I suspect that Mike Tomlin just has nightmares of Joe Flacco for whatever reason, because last year it was I forget what press conference it was, but he was saying, it was after that Colts game where Joe Flacco beat the Steelers. He said to his defense before the game, keep Anthony Richardson upright because we don't want Flacco in the game. And he said, we brought Flacco in the game. This dude has nightmares about Joe Flacco even when he's not even in the picture. There was no reason to believe that Anthony Richardson was going to get hurt in that game. He did. Joe Flacco comes in, torches them. They have no shot, and they lose that game. And now it's like, even 2 weeks ago, when this trade first happened between the Browns and the Bengals, he says, he comes home with this comment, and he was like, what are the Browns doing? They're giving life to this division rival in the division. We talked about it even too. It's the first time a quarterback has been traded to a division rival in the last 50 years. And Mike Tomlin was even thinking about that 2 weeks ago, even before all this stuff had happened. This guy just sees ghosts when it comes to Joe Flacco. And I wonder if, like, maybe that's something you can chalk this game up to too, because I don't know. I'm trying to find other ways to approach this game from a way that I don't have to blame the defense and the way that I don't have to blame Mike Tomlin. Is it possible that Joe Flacco just owns the Steelers?
Well, it makes no sense. Like, I would say of the past few years, absolutely. But it makes no sense because we owned him in the playoffs. Overall record, we dominated him week in, week out, year in, year out. So I don't understand where this fear of him, Joe Flacco, came from Mike Tomlin, because he definitely has the better record over him throughout all the years. And so it just doesn't make sense. Like, one, what a horrible mentality for that Colts game. I had no idea he said that, but like the fact that you would say that or think that shows that you're just under-equipped for, whatever that guy has, which it's Joe Flacco. It's not, it's not like Lamar Jackson or something. I guess I think that Joe Flacco definitely has a number these past few years. And yeah, like his comments, the leading up to the game about the trade, I think that was the Browns just giving us the bird, saying we can't beat you, but we're going to make sure the Bengals can. Because the Browns, they got to find a way to do it. And yeah, I think that I don't know what it is, but something about Joe Flacco, Mike Tomlin just can't get over.
Well, it's funny too, because every Browns fan that I've ever interacted with that I follow on like Instagram, they were reposting stuff about Joe Flacco beating the Steelers. It was their Super Bowl, and it wasn't a game they even played in.
Yeah, and I mean that's like, that's what it makes it worse, because it's like, okay, like just stop. You literally did nothing. It's so annoying. I can't stand it.
Yeah, this was a real stinker of a week. I want to take a little bit of the blame because I asked you guys before the game. I hadn't worn a Steelers jersey to watch a Steelers game this year, and I asked you guys. I said, "Hey, I've got access to my Steelers jersey now. Can I wear it tonight?" And you, I think specifically, were like, "Yeah, go for it." And sure enough, that didn't work out, and it's still laying on the couch after I threw it after the game. So, and that was what, 5 days ago. So
Yeah, I think I'm gonna check, because I was looking when you said that text, because I remember seeing that, like wearing the jersey, because I'm pretty superstitious too when it comes to the games and stuff. But yeah, I don't remember. I thought I was like, oh gosh, I don't know. Like I was a little nervous because of that. But yeah, oh man, I put no blame on you. That's totally on the Steelers, even though I'm a little superstitious. Um, okay, I just found it actually. Yeah, because you asked that, and I said, "Oh gosh, I'm not sure." And then Zach was like, "Just do it. Here we go."
So we're blaming this one on Zach. It's not on me
this
week.
one's on Zach.
You hear that? You hear that, Z Money? This is your fault. This is your fault.
That's right.
Oh man. Well, I want to talk more about this Bengals game because there was so much fun stuff that happened. I mean, it was an absolute classic of a game. I mean, nonpartisan fans that were watching this game were like, this was an awesome Thursday night football game. The AARP Bowl, between a couple of the oldest quarterbacks in the league, and, both of them just put on a show, which was great. Now, I guess one more thing before we kind of move on to the Bengals. Are you concerned about these picks that Aaron Rodgers is throwing right now, or what are you thinking about this? Because the rate with which he's throwing them is a bit higher than we've seen historically from him.
Yeah, I think I wasn't concerned, because before this point, I didn't really think that his interceptions were costing us games. Like the Seattle game, for example, I think that I think he had 2 picks, and I thought both of them, but maybe just one of them were kind of like it was already over. Um, so I wasn't, but yeah, I think that that one deep ball, the first one, really changed momentum. Um, and I think, yeah, I think it would have been a different outcome if we were home too, because that Bengals crowd was just hungry for something good to happen. And once it did, I mean, that just killed us. But I would say a little. I would say, you know, I wish he would go back a little bit back in time. Like, he's not an interception quarterback. Now, obviously, the past couple of years has been a little different, but I think that, yeah, I think he definitely needs to take it down a bit. But I don't want that to mean, oh, I'll stop throwing it to DK as much. So I would rather him throw it to DK and risk the interceptions than not throw it to him.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, I think that one thing, as far as the game plan went, we talked about it briefly, but they were gashing the Bengals in the run early on, and then they kind of abandoned that in the end of the second quarter, and that's when they started chucking the ball, and that's when they had those 2 interceptions. So, do you think that that was a part of why we lost too? Because if you figure those 2 interceptions were a 10-point swing, because the first one they went back and scored, and the other one they scored a field goal right before the half. So, in my mind, my dad was even texting me. He's like, why the heck did we abandon the run? Because it was working the whole time. I don't know if you kind of noticed that or not, but that was something that I was a little concerned with too.
I actually didn't. Now that you say it, because I have Jalen Warren on my fantasy team, I do remember him getting off to a hot start and then me just wishing that they would go back to him like once. Because, yeah, they really, second half especially, kind of dipped away from him. And there's just, man, like, even though this game we played so horrible, it was just so close to being a few plays away from a win. Like, I'm specifically in that first quarter, the Jalen Warren touchdown that he scored. I forget why it got taken away.
It was a holding by Zach Frazier.
Right. And it was so frustrating because even if he hadn't hold it, that guy wasn't going to get Jalen Warren. Like, I remember watching that being like, there's no way he gets to him, even if he doesn't hold. So, yeah, I don't know why we abandoned the run game. I think maybe we got a little too trigger happy, maybe a little too cocky of like, let's just put it away right now. And then it just bit us. And yeah, I think that we came out with great execution and then something shook us and we just lost whatever we had going in that first quarter.
Right. And it was nice to see that they actually bounced back and started to move the ball in the second half, because that was one of my concerns, was that it was going to turn into a blowout, but that really wasn't the case. I mean, Rodgers was throwing good balls after that. And, even like you said, when they gave it to Warren, I mean, he was effective on the ground even in the second half too. So it seems like that little blip in the second quarter, I mean, like the last 8 minutes of the second quarter, I mean, you could almost chalk up the ball game to that right there. Obviously, you can't really when you look at the whole course of the game, but that little microcosm, I mean, again, at that point, they were up 10-0, and they let up a little bit. We talked about this. We've talked about this so many times. Keep your foot on the gas. If it's working, keep going back to it. And maybe they tried in a way to go back to the gas by just chucking it deep and, making these long plays, but that ended up not working. And it just seemed like that they were trying to force something that wasn't there. And then in turn, it just came back and backfired.
Yeah. And I think, yeah, I don't know whether it was Rodgers or Smith that was kind of like, let's just go for it and just guns blazing, and who kind of wanted to open that up. But I think it was just, probably overconfidence of those first 2 drives and, just wanted to assert dominance. And I think we just got a little cocky, and then that bit us. And, I think once we kind of got back to what we were normally doing, like you were saying in the second half, we got right back in it and, almost won the game. So I think it just, something happened in that second quarter. And especially in the second half, though, like, what's the Zach Taylor, the Bengals coach? I mean, he went in there and said something about our defense, and our defense could not adjust to whatever he said in that halftime.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned him, because the broadcast crew specifically said about Zach Taylor, he said that Zach Taylor is not playing not to lose this game. He is playing to win the game. And it's funny that they said that exactly because you have said that several times. The Steelers play not to lose the game. The Bengals did not play that way this week. And what happened? They won.
Well, yeah, and I wonder if because we always get a trap game every year with Mike Tomlin. I wonder if he just goes into those games always thinking that. Like sometimes I'm like, I used to think maybe he goes into it like any other week, and then eventually it starts to become a play not to lose. But I wonder if he just walks in like that, and that's just his mentality. Is let's just not lose this one, so we can focus on Sunday night against Green Bay or something. And it's like, yeah, I mean that's never going to get you a win.
Nope. Well, speaking of Green Bay, I mean it's not a quick turnaround because they've got a long week, which I think should actually help us a good bit, and I actually have some confidence in that regard. We are going to be wearing those new uniforms. Do you remember those uniforms?
They're interesting, but I'm excited to see them on the field because I might like them.
I don't know. I think that they're going to be terrible, but maybe in a way it helps us because that's what the Packers are going to have to stare at the whole game. So, I don't know. I'll have to see it on the field first, but they are interesting to say the least.
Yeah, I don't know if I like them in prime time. I was assuming they kind of use them like they use the Bumblebee jerseys. Like they never wore those prime time. So I was expecting something like a 1 o'clock or 4 o'clock game was when they would wear them. So prime time, I feel like it'll be a little odd. I'm like maybe you should have worn the Color Rush instead of these. But yeah, I also am going in with some confidence just because of the long week. It's prime time at home. The Packers play similar to we do, and I think we play well to teams that play like we do. And so I think that there's a decent amount of things here that are hopeful.
Well, in a way, I'm like very low on the Packers this year, despite the fact that they are 4-1-1. So I'm looking at their schedule. They beat the Lions in week 1, which that was a weird week. The Lions just did not seem like that they were their Lions team from last year. They beat the Commanders in week 2. Then they lost to the Browns in week 3, which I saw live. Then they tied 40-40 to the Dallas Cowboys. And then the last 2 weeks, they beat the Bengals and they beat the Cardinals. And this last week against the Cardinals, they barely beat them. So I'm low on the Packers despite how good their record looks. I'm also pretty low on Jordan Love. I just don't think he's that great, to be honest. And maybe that's the bias that I have, like having watched him live this season, but I really don't have a lot of confidence in the Packers over the course of the season, not necessarily in the microcosm of this game, but over the course of the year. I'm like, I don't really believe in the Packers this year.
No, I don't at all. I think that last year I was like, I like Matt LaFleur and I still think he's a good coach. And last year I was like, hey, they got 11 wins, maybe not the best wins, but Jordan Love was high in interceptions, but I think that they're kind of figuring it out. And then, yeah, that first game seemed super like, random now that the season has kind of stepped in a little bit. And so I'm also really low on Jordan Love. I think that the going into this year, I've really seen enough where I'm just like, yeah, he's not the guy. And I also think that the Packers are sus. I think that they're similar to last year. Last year they had like 11 wins, like I said, and I think that 10 of them were to teams with non-winning records. So they just can't beat really, really good teams. I'm not saying we're a really, really good team, but I think that like we're similar to the Packers in that way, and so I think we'll match up well.
Well, interestingly, if Chase Brown goes for 100 yards on 10 carries against us, what the heck is Josh Jacobs going to do? That is kind of my main concern this week. Like I said, I don't think Jordan Love's exceptional, but if the way things are trending, Josh Jacobs could just go ballistic this week. I think he already has 8 touchdowns this year.
I wouldn't be surprised because they really have made him their, bell cow over these past 2 seasons, and obviously for good reason. And I wouldn't be surprised if he has that many. And yeah, I think that I don't know what to expect as far as the run game goes. Because part of me wants to say we're gonna get things figured out, but I think that we were struggling with the run game last year too, and so it's like, why would I say that? I don't think that we've shown in a long while that we've been able to do that. So I don't know. I think that they could really, really gas us in the run, but I don't know. I mean, last week all my predictions were wrong, so I don't even know what to predict this week.
I'm so mad because I was very hesitant last week to say a Steelers win. And I think the reason why I said it was because you made your prediction first. And I'm like, okay, he's thinking like along the same lines is like, he's predicting a win. I should just predict a win. But literally everything that I did this week operated in a way that the Bengals were going to win. Every single pick'em I had this week, I predicted the Bengals to win. I told people, I'm like, hey, if you're a betting man, the Bengals are probably going to win this game. All the numbers were backed up with me. And I'm so mad because the entire time leading up to the game, I'm like, the Bengals are just going to win this week, aren't they? And I had that feeling when we recorded the episode. I had the feeling ever since we recorded the episode. And sure enough, even during the game, I'm like, well, there it is. So we still don't have any parity between our predictions this year, and I'm really upset that I wasn't the first one to break it this last week.
Well, I apologize that I led you down the wrong path, but I was kind of hoping, because I knew you were leaning more towards loss. I was kind of hoping that me saying win would get you to say win, so that we'd be similar in the record, because I knew saying win was a risk. So I'll let you predict first this week so that I don't have any implication on your prediction.
All right. Well, like I said, I'm low overall on the Packers, and it would make so much sense for the Steelers to have this like mid-season collapse right now, because at some point they're going to have a losing streak of some sorts. But I don't think it's going to be this week. I think that the home crowd, I think the primetime game atmosphere, and I think also Aaron Rodgers against his former team, not necessarily that he has any animosity towards the Packers, but in a way, like he's a big chip on the shoulder guy, and he's a guy that likes to go out there and just prove people wrong, whether or not they actually make an assertion about him in the first place. So I think that Aaron Rodgers is going to have another good game this week. And interestingly enough, the Packers don't turn the ball over, and they don't take the ball away either. So it's interesting because the Steelers have 0 takeaways in the last 2 weeks, and they also have given up 0 sacks in the last 2 weeks. So a lot of good things are happening with the Steelers right now. And I think for right now, I'm going to say that the Steelers come back. I think it's a bounce back win, and I think the Steelers win this one 27-24.
Okay, yeah, I agree with a lot of what you're saying. I think that we do have a bounce back game, and that we do, come back and just figure it out. I think that, this team isn't what it was on Thursday. And so I think we're going to figure it out and come back and win. I think it's going to be similar scoring to you. I think I was going to go a little bit lower. I think it'll be a win. I think it'll be 24-21.
Okay. Do you have any concern with Micah Parsons this week? I mean, we've seen him be very good in games this season. We've seen him be fairly quiet in games. Is the offensive line going to stand up to him this week?
I would say no. I would expect him to get a decent amount of pressures and at least one sack.
Okay. I mean, the Steelers, like I said, they haven't given up a sack in 2 weeks. One was against a very good Browns defense that includes Myles Garrett, whom we've talked about, at large, that, maybe he's overrated, maybe not. I don't know. Actually, I do know, but, I digress. But Michael Parsons is one of those type of game wreckers. He's one of those TJ Watt, Myles Garrett types of guys. And that might be my only concern coming into this week. It's a primetime game. The lights are bright. He's the type of guy that shows up when the lights are bright. And as well as the offensive line has been playing, what are you going to do against a guy that looks like this? I thought the offensive line was incredible against the Bengals for most of the game, and they're going to have to do that again.
Yeah, I agree. I think it'll be really interesting how we match up with him. And I'm excited to see it. I'm hopeful that we could contain him a decent amount, but I think that he will make a splash play at some point. But I have been impressed, like even this past week, obviously with our own line. So we'll see. I'm not ready to give up hope on this team. I think we're going to have a good week.
Man, we're holding on to hope. This was one of those episodes where it was like, it should have been very, very hopeless. But interestingly enough, I think even the more as we talked, the hope is just kind of creeping right back into things. So here we are. Here we are back at square one again, you know?
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what can happen. They could just crush it down even more. Or who knows? We'll see. Hopefully not.
Well, hopefully not. It's a big Sunday night football game at Heinz Field between the Packers and the Steelers. Should be a pretty, it will be a uniform/jersey game of all time. A game of all time in the jersey matchup.
You can say that again for sure. There ain't no doubt.
It'll be something else. But as far as things go, Boardman Black and Gold is sponsored by Zeka Enterprises, crafting furniture solutions in northwestern Pennsylvania. You can call 919-406-4679 to turn your furniture problems into furniture solutions. While the Steelers come away with a dud against the Cincinnati Bengals, it was a close game. It was a good game. It was a great entertainment factor game, but they come up just a little bit short. But an opportunity now to bounce back against the Green Bay Packers, which I feel like would be not a statement win, but it would be a very solid win, I think, as far as the resume goes over the course of the season. So this is a big week, and Mike Tomlin's got a long week to figure it out, so we'll see what he does.
Yeah, it is a big week, and, all I'm looking for is just show us that you're not that team that lost to the Bengals Thursday night.
Yep. Be the team that we want you to be, not the team that we expect you to be. Exactly.
That's right.
Well, as far as things go, we appreciate you listening to Boardman Black and Gold. We'll be back after this Packers week to break it all down. Myself, Zane and David, here on the Boardman Black and Gold podcast. Thanks for listening. We will see you next week.